Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley reporting from Washington, D.C. Well, those of you who heard the broadcast last week may recall I was trying to talk up the idea of, instead of marching on Washington only, to march into the heart of evil, the actual command center where these problems begin, i.e. Wall Street, the headquarters of the finance oligarchs. And in particular, I was talking about the need for a march on Goldman Sachs to claw back some of the TARP money, the bailout money that Goldman Sachs has looted and pillaged out of the federal budget and the Treasury, and in particular to make that march on the basis of a 1% Tobin tax on Wall Street's speculative turnover, make Wall Street pay for the depression they've created and which they've imposed on the rest of us. And lo and behold, thanks to a listener who sent me a tip-off on this, there is a march on Goldman Sachs. It's on Friday, the 25th of September. Now, we're taping the program here on Thursday, the 24th of September. But on Friday, the 25th of September at 5 p.m. at the end of the business day, there's a march on Goldman Sachs to protest the shutdown and various anti-labor, anti-worker measures being carried out at the Stella d'Oro Bakery up in the Bronx. This is a matter of the Bakery Confectioners, Tobacco Workers, and Grain Millers International Union Local 50. They have been on strike at the Stella d'Oro plant in the Bronx since August 13th, apparently. The company wants to shut down that factory unless the workers are willing to take wage cuts of 25%, increased payments for health insurance, no holidays, vacations, or sick pay, eliminate extra pay for working Saturdays, and essentially abandon a whole series of other rights that the workers had won over the years. So this is a march. I want to warn people, it looks like anarchists will be there one way or another. Who knows what's going to show up. But I think also there's a lot of pro-labor forces. There are probably some socialist sects left over in the New York City area that are going to show up for this. This looks like being a very interesting thing. Please go to actindependent.org, and there you will find a very good intervention leaflet. This is a classic strike support operation. There's an irony of history at work here. People may remember the old Baltimore Strike Support Coalition at the Schmitz Bakery Workers back in 1971. Once again, it's the bakery workers, it's the Bakery Confectioners Workers, Local 50 this time, that are involved in this in the strike there at Stella d'Oro. But remember, broaden the appeal by going with a Tobin tax, a 1% Tobin tax. The relevance to Goldman Sachs is that Brynwood Partners, the private equity firm of hedge fund hyenas and asset strippers, have gotten control of this Stella d'Oro plant bakery in the Bronx, and they're the ones who want to downsize the place, institute speed up, cut wages, and all the rest of it. So they're basically acting as a front for Goldman Sachs. So here you have it. Goldman Sachs takes tens of billions of dollars from the Treasury, and their private equity leveraged buyout operation, Brynwood Partners, comes forward and tries to gouge and destroy the wages and working conditions of the workers at the Stella d'Oro plant in the Bronx. Remember, what is needed is not just cheerleading, it's not just passive support. It goes beyond that. You've got to get out there and broaden the programmatic basis of the strike. When you have a striking union like this, you've got to add programmatic elements from the outside, whether or not the workers immediately understand what you're doing, and whether or not they think it's a good idea. You've basically got to find ways to make the program broader than just the Stella d'Oro factory in the Bronx, although that's going to be a part of it, absolutely. And you've got to try to bring in other social forces, other unions, unemployed workers, any kind of other people that may increase the power of these agitations. And, of course, Goldman Sachs is a good goal, a good target for such a protest. And a lot of ferment about this in the New York City labor press. We can assume that all sorts of counter gangs, the entire group of socialist sects and other relics of the 60s and 70s will be around. Fine, let them do something good. And they will have their own take on it. But the take that I recommend is the Act Independent line. Go to the Act Independent website. You will find a very useful intervention leaflet there that says support the Stella D'Oro workers, no layoffs, no increases in the cost of health insurance and the rest of it, but impose a 1% Tobin tax on Goldman Sachs. In other words, don't just protest Goldman Sachs, make them pay. Claw back some of that TARP, right? They got a good $10 to $12 billion, top dollar on their derivatives with the AIG London hedge fund. Isn't that amazing? All those Goldman Sachs guys, cash carry, and the rest of them running the TARP, the bailout. Goldman got that money. There's no way to get it back except through a Tobin tax. A company like Goldman Sachs probably pays zero to minimal corporate income tax. The corporate income tax has gone out of style, so that's another reason why we want a Tobin tax to hit these speculators in the La Banza where it really hurts. So again, the cavorting and the gesticulating of anarchists gets you nowhere. The rather more radical measure is make Goldman Sachs cough up cash. They do high-frequency trading? Wonderful, 1%. They do flash trading? Beautiful, 1% on that too. You want to do some program trading? Great, 1% on all the transactions. And you see quite quickly this begins to take the life out of the booze for Lloyd Blankfein and his merry men at Goldman Sachs. This is a purely parasitic organization. As Taibbi says, it is this vampire squid attached to the face of humanity, sticking its blood funnel at anything that seems to be alive and moving. So the march on Goldman Sachs. Now, that's not going to be the definitive march on Goldman Sachs, but notice also well-scheduled 5 p.m., rally in Wall Street at 5 p.m. when the brokers get out, and then take it to City Hall and see what Mayor Bloomberg has to do with this. Again, though, watch out for anarchists. The reason I think this is worth mentioning and supporting is because if enough people show up who are not anarchists, sometimes the anarchists can be pushed out of the scene. They can be pushed to the edges, and they're going to do whatever they're going to do, but that may not be enough to ruin and shut down the entire event. So strike support to be sure, but again, beware of those anarchist provocateurs that like to wreck these things. And that's the same story for these events in Pittsburgh. We did an intervention with Act Independent into some of the organizers of the G20 protest in Pittsburgh going on the 24th, 25th of September. Just for your information, we're taping this program on Thursday, the 24th of September, so I don't know exactly what's going on at the Pittsburgh G20. But there were signs that the usual suspects, the usual anarchists, were going to be doing their thing, and that they had no program. They had no means of making the finance oligarchs pay. Well, we do, and it's a 1% Tobin tax on all of their financial speculation. Back in a minute.